So we're talking about gifted and talented, okay? So I wrote this research paper called Gifted and Talented, and this is my thoughts about the gifted and talented programs in public education, okay? So let's begin. So I was in several gifted and talented programs many years ago when the public school system in Kentucky had captured my childhood. I made good grades, but the awards and the recognition of my intelligence and academic achievements is what made me feel capable and confidence in my abilities grew. Educational theorist Bell Hooks from Christian County, Kentucky talked about the difference between segregated black schools in the 50s and 60s and the integrated schools afterwards, the white schools, which she was there during the transition from segregation to integration. And for Bell Hooks, the Kentucky educational theorist, the difference was absolutely fundamental. And to go back to the good old days of yore of segregated black schools was her conclusion, which represents a radical departure of the current industrial Prussian education in America today. For Bell Hooks, during the times of segregated black schools, black folks in general and the black educators specifically understood that the general European immigrant society they were living in was against them. The white supremacist racial dictatorship. The vast majority of racist white folks in America were against black folks even being considered human beings, let alone letting them get an education. The black educators understood that the world around them was against them. And so therefore elevating the best and brightest of the black students wasn't just a, exercise in futility. It was absolutely essential. It was paramount to the success of the black folks. Necessity is the mother of all invention, and because of the pressure for black educators to find and develop future captains of industry, to find a leadership class to help pull the masses of black folks up, was absolutely enormous. The black educators took this task seriously, would go above and beyond the call of duty in order to elevate the best and brightest. Whereas the white schools, the Prussian industrial model, was 100% compliance and obedience and conformity. Just do as you're told and just go through the day. So education went from fun, learning, and revolutionary to non-existent, shut up, you're just a dumb slave. The black educators would allow more freedom and autonomy. So that satisfaction in academic achievement would lead the bright and best. So their own satisfaction in their work is what would lead the brightest and best. Black educators would even make house calls and visits in order to really get to know their best hopes, know everything about them, where they are in the family hierarchy, to make sure that all obstacles in their lives are removed. So that way it makes for the best conditions for the best and brightest to learn new schools and to be indoctrinated with being concerned about helping the general community. Black folks decided that the best way to win was to develop a leadership class of teachers, police officers, lawyers, doctors, politicians, capable laborers, artisans, merchants, farmers, for both selfish reasons and for basic sustenance. For what lies in the best and brightest is the hope that one of them will be the one who leads humanity into Martin Luther King's promised prairie meadow land. The Negro race, like all races, is going to be saved by its exceptional men. The problem of education, then, among Negroes must first of all deal with the talented tenth. It is the problem of developing the best of this race, that they may guide the mass away from the contamination and death of the worst in their own and other races. Now, the training of men is a difficult and intricate task. Its technique is a matter for educational experts, but its object is for the vision of seers. If we make money the object of man training, we shall develop money makers, but not necessarily men. If we make technical skill the object of education, we may possess artisans, but not in nature men. Men we shall have only as make manhood the object of the work of the schools. Intelligence, broad sympathy, knowledge of the world that was and is, and of the relation of men to it. This is the curriculum of that higher education which must underlie true life. On this foundation, we may build breadwinning, skill of the hand, and quickness of brain, with never a fear lest the child and man mistake the means of living for the object of life. That's W.E.B. Du Bois, 1903. So Du Bois was big about the talented tenth, about raising the leadership class of black folks. So Bell Hooks sees that in black schools they were actually allowed to pursue their own academic achievements. They were pressured and put, not only to do the things that they wanted to do, but to do things good enough for the entire community. There aren't many studies about the effects of gifted and talented programs and their participants. This is a 2013 Gomez and Conejeros article. But from my own perspective, I really enjoyed Gifted and Talented because it was something that changed throughout the day. It broke up the monotony. It liberated me from the daily, boring, drumbeat droll of my core studies and enabled me to explore my other talents and skills that weren't being put to good use in the general mainstream. Public schools are horrible at excellence. It's a race to the middle with public education. And that's a utilitarian tactic. That's what you're supposed to do. You do not want to teach to just, if you're teaching to the whole class, you don't want to just teach to the top 10, because then you leave 90% of the class behind. And you can't dumb it down for the bottom 10%, because then virtually everybody suffers and is left behind and nobody learns anything. So teachers are rationally expected to teach to the middle of the class. And then logically so, it makes sense, because they're teaching at a par level. Those who are gifted and have talents, giftedness and talents, they're left behind, or they're left bored and sleeping after they finish the final exam in 10 minutes on the first day of class. There's plenty of literature that suggests by focusing on the dimmest of children with no child left behind, we take the limelight off the hope for the future of America and possibly mankind. That's Kaplan and Gallagher, 2004. Since 2001, all NAGC, National Association of Gifted Children presidents, have taken this exact same position. No child left behind. Aiming towards, racing to the bottom or just to the middle, you're totally leaving out the top. Even disabilities, ADHD and autism is getting so much attention. People, and finally that's a good thing, people are giving, resources and time and attention to it. But the gifted and talented people are being left behind, and there's no focus at all in raising the leadership of our class. You want to know why America is losing out when it comes to science and technology and math throughout the world? This is one of the main reasons. They're not developing the leadership class. Also, the general oppression and totalitarian fascism, right? So everybody just assumes that they're nobody, and their sovereignty is impeded upon, right? Their sovereignty is invaded. Since 2001, all National Association of Gifted Children presidents have taken this position. What makes one gifted and talented? There's a bunch of different definitions, but in general, usually a high IQ is one indication of being gifted and talented, and having a remarkable mastery of any skill is gifted and talented too. So those are the two general ones, right? So having a high IQ, meaning it's not necessarily a bunch of knowledge or know stuff, or high IQ means that you're able to analyze and take apart and think about things. So because of having an IQ, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can do anything or have good analytical skills or will be somebody, but it's a good indication that if properly developed and taught, then you could turn that smart mind and then maybe cure cancer, maybe build a a society where people actually care about one another. So here's a list of characteristics of gifted and talented people. Creativity. They can learn quickly and easily. They can relate ideas to each other. They make sound judgments. They appreciate multiple and opposing points of view. Perceive higher order cognitive thinking skills such as those listed on top of Bloom's taxonomy. Evaluate, analyze, synthesis. High IQ raises you to the top of Bloom's taxonomy. You're able to evaluate, analyze, and synthesize because you have high IQs. You can acquire and manipulate abstract symbol systems. You're good at math and logic, solves problems by reframing the problem and creating novel solutions, etc. Here's a list of characteristics that have been noted in highly gifted students with IQs of 145 and above. They have an intense intellectual curiosity, fascination with basic words and simple ideas, perfectionism and a need for precision, learning with great, large, murky, intuitive leaps, intense need for mental stimulation and challenge, difficulty conforming to the thinking, logic, reasoning of others, early moral and existential concerns, tendency towards introversion. So the federal government, NAGC, National Association for Gifted Students, Joseph Renzulli, Jane Pierto, and June Maker all have their own definitions of what gifted and talented is. The current federal definition is first promulgated in the Jacob K. Javits Gifted and Talented Students Education Act of 1988 as part of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, now included in the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. The federal government defines gifted and talented as those who give evidence of high achievement capability in areas such as intellectual, creative, artistic, or leadership capacity, or in specific academic fields and who need services and activities not ordinarily provided by the school in order to fully develop those capabilities. So not just high IQs and having, being able to play a saxophone, but there's lots of things: artistic, creativity, and leadership. National Association for Gifted Children defines gifted individuals as those who demonstrate outstanding levels of aptitude, defined as an exceptional ability to reason and learn, or competence, documented performance, or achievement in the top 10% or rare in one or more domains. Domains include any structured area of activity with its own symbol system, e.g. mathematics, music, language, and or set of sensory motor skills, such as painting, dance, or sports. Okay, so if you're good at math, music, or language, if you're good at painting, dance, sports, if you're good at leadership, artistic, you're gifted and talented. Jane Pierto defines the gifted as having a superior memory, observational powers, curiosity, creativity, and ability to learn school-related subject matters rapidly and accurately with a minimum of drill and repetition, have a right to an education that is differentiated according to those characteristics. This is me. It's boring. The school is absolutely boring to gifted and talented students, and then they have to, go along with the boring drollness of the whole school. June Maker defines gifted and talented student as a problem solver who can create a new or clear definition of an existing problem. B, devise new and more efficient or effective methods. And C, reach solutions that may differ from the usual but are recognized as being effective, perhaps more effective than previous solutions. So if you can create a new or clear definition of an existing problem, if you can devise new and more efficient effective methods, and if you can reach solutions that differ from the usual as recognized being as effective, perhaps even more effective than previous solutions, and you're gifted. 3 other measures of intelligence are Sternberg's 2003-2007 Triarchic Theory of Intelligence, 2 Gagne's 2003 Differentiated Model of Giftedness and Talented, and 3 Gardner's Theory of Multiple Intelligences. And I like Gardner's Theory of Multiple Intelligences. There's 8 different intelligences that Gardner points out, and one of them is the physical your physical prowess. There's, people, typically jocks are thought of as not being smart, but when they're playing basketball, you got to make decisions. You got to make, pass the ball there, here, and then you got to win, right? You got to put the ball on the other side more often. So there is a logic, there is a thought to it, there is, it's really smart stuff actually. And they say that according to Gardner's Theory of Multiple Intelligence, having a intelligence on how to use your body, how to use, how to physically use your body and to do it well, that's an intelligence. So in college, so that means great basketball players are gifted and talented. Great sports players, great. That's a talent, right? In college, there's scholars housing. So when you go to college, they already have a hierarchy. The scholarship students that are held in higher regard than the average college student, even though college itself is already an elitist institution. So you have, already everybody that goes to college that's not an opportunity everybody has. But even in college, there's like gifted and talented people. How my gifted and talented program in both Northern Kentucky elementary schools unfolded was a few days a week or a month. The gifted and talented teacher would pull the students out of the mainstream classes to work on other independent projects with other gifted and talented students for no grade. The motivation of having satisfaction in completing one's own academic pursuits is enough. Yeah, I remember actually doing this Babe Ruth project, and I still remember it today. And she was like, "Wow, that's really good." And Babe Ruth is a German, right? The great Bambino, also an alcoholic, not the greatest hero to emulate, but good enough, right? Regardless, I pursued it. I did it and did it on my own. I didn't get a grade for it. I got no credit whatsoever, but because I was satisfied in my own academic pursuits, I was happy about it. Also, the other gifted and talented students were doing it too, so I was also with like-minded people. I also remember completing a bunch of intellectual puzzles and games. We would have had to make up the work in the classrooms that we left in addition to the work in the gifted and talented, so we'd have double the work of the normies. There's many changes that need to be made. We could have a whole school for gifted and talented, or perhaps a class in of itself that's dedicated to just gifted and talented. But having gifted and talented set up the way I just described it, basically more labor is being piled on top of the best and brightest in addition to their current schoolwork for little credit and not even a grade. So that puts the gifted and talented too much on the periphery. when it should be mainstream, not only for the 3 to 5%, but for the entire school, since we're all leaders, all 7 billion of us. While my participation in the gifted and talented programs disturbed the other classes marginally, virtually seamless and invisible, since it was just for a few hours, for a few days in the month, considering how satisfied I was with the gifted and talented programs that I was in Gallatin County, in Grant County, Kentucky. I generally support gifted and talented programs. In general, I support them. So even though there's double the work, it breaks up the monotony, it pulls you out, you get to be around other people that are considered gifted and talented, so you're with like-minded folks. And more resources, opportunities for the best and brightest to blossom and shine need to be bequeathed and implemented. Gifted and talented experts are pointing out that Common Core, while raising the standards for many states, still isn't challenging enough for gifted and talented students. The director of NAGC, Jane Clarenbach, said some students will be able to meet the standards faster than others, and the developers of Common Core realize that one size does not fit all. They specifically said that children with disabilities and advanced learners are going to need more. Ash 2013. The bottom line for Jane Clarenbach is that differentiation continues to be necessary for gifted learners under Common Core. But it's not only differentiation that gifted and talented students need. For gifted and talented learners, they need to be given more freedom and autonomy to dictate the terms of their own educational programs, to follow their own intellectual pursuits and curiosities, to develop the idea, to make goals, and then to complete them. That is what the teacher is there for. More as an administrator, guide by the side, someone to encourage and motivate and give the attention necessary for people to be able to develop and to become, to become their own person, to grow into who they are going to become, right? So gifted and talented learners, they not only do they need the freedom to pursue their own pursuits and curiosities, they also need to work on cooperative learning tactics. So that way they could socially interact with other unique folks with talents, skills, and brains, and avoid being embarrassed of their talents or intelligence, to be given confidence from belonging to a group that has other unique, gifted, and talented learners. So I remember being in public education, and I remember playing on the academic team and doing some other things, but I hated it. I hated being known as a smart person. I hated, being the go-to person that answered the questions, that knew all the stuff, and I had to fight with that. I had to fight with the idea of being cool versus wanting to actually excel and do well, with my academics. And the thing with academics is it academic, so it's just irrelevant? We need to get away from that. We need to stop assigning academic knowledge that's academic. We need to assign academic knowledge that's going to have actual consequences for, the real world. So if you're theorizing, come up with theories. Dream the best societies that you can dream, and then hopefully we can achieve 1% of all that we dream. So cooperative learning, which is a learning tactic where the students get together and they, they're told to learn together in some respects, so that each one of them could have like a leader that they all research, and then they come together and they tell about the leader that they had researched. So that means they teach each other, and then they learn to respect and listen to each other. That's totally absent in public education too. There's a dictator, and you can't talk to anybody else. Shut up, sit down. 100% compliance. That's how you teach like a champion. 100% compliance. Totalitarian, fascist, Prussian industrial model is outdated, outmoded. You're manipulating all the students, and you're fucking everybody up. When you take someone's freedom away, you take everything away from them. You're not just taking away, you're taking their humanity away. When you take away their freedom, you take away their humanity. And when a person has a humanity, what else do they have? I mean, when you take away their humanity, you've taken everything away from them. So that means they have no heart, no spirit, no ethics or morals, no drive, no ambitions, no history, no anything. They just basically is like you just fell off a turnip truck, you walked in, shut up, get to work. No, that makes no sense. How is a person supposed to become a great leader and supposed to be an important person when they're being taught to shut up and sit down? When they're taught to be a slave? You're not teaching people to be leaders. You're teaching them to be slaves. You're doing damage. You're hurting people by doing exactly that. So that's why cooperative learning should be utilized, because in addition to learning, relationships are being developed, and those relationships are being based upon learning together. So instead of it being Hunger Games where we attack each other, right, for the masses' delight, instead we're working together. We look at each other as equals. We're learning to respect one another. They are teaching. I am learning. I am teaching. They are learning. It's a good system, okay? We both learn how to teach, which is the best way to learn. It's the bottom part of the learning pyramid, is to teach others. You retain 90% of all that to teach. So when you have the students teaching each other, the ones who are teaching are the ones who are learning the most. Just like in schools, the only people that's learning in the schools based upon the learning pyramid are the teachers. They get 90% of all that they teach is retained, but only 5% of their stupid, boring-ass lectures are retained. So cooperative learning should be utilized, right? So relationships are based upon learning together, respecting the other's discoveries and knowledge. More discovery, more creative play. Projects should be used, such as actual academic games, role play, debate. There's so many things that you can do with folks if you actually, you know, when you have gifted and talented, they're creative, so put it up to them. What do you all want to do? You know, just open it up to them. What do you want to do? What research projects do you want to do? There's Ralph Nader talked about this class, also Freedom Writers, where they talked about their own society and their own classrooms and how they had, you know, crappy books and broken windows. And because they actually analyzed their own school, they were able to, you know, you hear the children who say we need books better than you hear any politician. So when the children themselves are sitting there saying we don't have enough supplies to do the things that we need to do, we have outdated textbooks, we don't have proper facilities, that is more important. So we can do something like that, and that's like for really bad schools. That doesn't have to be so much like that. We can always improve. We can always get better. And so that's the, you know, there's a 100% compliance is how you teach like a champion, and that's totally wrong. What we want to teach them is for them to respect their sovereignty, because everybody has a sanctimonious, holy, spiritual sovereignty, which shouldn't be infringed upon. If I'm not bothering anybody and if I'm not hurting anybody, you don't need to. If I'm just sitting off to the side and then you come over and just start barking orders at me, I have to go ahead and do it. That's what public education is doing. They say you must learn or you must do what any arbitrary, absolute authority tells you what to do. Someone's giving you orders, you just have to do it. Don't question it, just do it. Blind obedience is why we have war, genocide, slavery. This is America. We're supposed to be individuals. We're supposed to love our freedom and supposed to love our democracy. There is nothing like that. It's strict hierarchy. It's totalitarianism. The majority of the American masses don't really care about their freedoms. Joe Biden is right. They don't care about the freedoms. They don't care about. They like the idea of it, but they don't really utilize it or, you know, understand how important it is. So. However, despite the stereotyping and name-calling, nerds, geeks, etc., that is present in U.S. schools, white males continue to outscore girls at the highest levels on tests such as the Scholastic Aptitude Test, the American College Test, the Differential Aptitude Test, and most achievement tests. African American and Latino Hispanic males consistently underperform compared to females of all races and to white men. So, for some reason, white males are doing fairly well when it comes to the IQ test. I think what they're pointing out with this is that's not a catch-all test, right? It's not something, just because you have IQ doesn't necessarily mean you're gifted and talented. And if you don't have a high IQ, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have a talent. In '93, the U.S. Department of Education reported that gifted programs have only 10% of the students who are poor. And there's more than just 10% poor folks in America, so this is disproportionate. It shows that poor kids are discriminated against even if they're gifted and talented. Everybody is capable of great achievements, and therefore everybody should be praised for their creativity, given encouragement for their achievements, and be taught the exact same as those with IQs of 200, with the same high expectations, freedom to learn and discover, more choice and autonomy, independent projects, and differentiated instruction, where academic progress dictates the curriculum instead of the fascist behavioralist or the overly bloated bureaucracy. While federal reports that 3% to 5% of the general population are gifted and talented, it's important to inflate that number to 10, 15, 25%, 100% in order to catch all the gifted and talented in one's schools, to make sure none of them slip through the cracks. But while we select a portion of the school's population to be treated with special treatment, putting more resources and time and money into our possible saviors, aren't we inherently labeling the rest of the population as average or maybe even below par? So if we're saying everybody else is below par, are we kind of, you're making a sort of a dichotomous in the, and we are. So, and also people rise to their expectations. So person who isn't gifted and talented, if you kept on, you know, if they saw some potential and you kept complimenting and working with them, eventually that developed into a talent, you got someone who's talented, right? They don't need to walk into school being a genius person who can play the saxophone and then you just carry that on. You might have to actually start the gifted and talentedness of those students themselves. So I'm sort of working this out. Yes, we need a leadership class. Yes, we need the talented 10th. We do need that because what we're doing right now is we're leaving them behind. So no child left behind except for the smart kids. We're going to make sure the bad kids and all the slow kids and anybody else that's out there, make sure all the, make sure all the crap is being taken care of, while the intelligent, smart people are not being taken care of. They're not being, given the resources that they need. So we need to do that for our society. That's absolutely essential. But I think we need to have, the whole school needs to be gifted and talented, okay? So, what's the data on this? Just because one doesn't have a 200 IQ doesn't mean they can't be the next person who discovers the cure for cancer, have the same capabilities as those who are so-called gifted and talented. While some folks are just naturally gifted and talented, most folks are taught and trained to have the so-called gifted and talented qualities. And maybe it may take a normie a little bit more time to get to the right answer. When focused in their field of expertise, they can excel, lead, take part, create new, analyze, judge, etc., along with all the autistic Einsteins and super X-Men intelligence Stephen Hawkings of the world. So Einstein, autistic, Stephen Hawking, super X-Men intelligent. This is incredible. This is such a great piece, actually. And I got a C on this, okay? A foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. Emerson, 1841. This has happened many times. I'll start to write, an article, with the specific vision in mind, and then as I'm working through it, I'm kind of thinking, man, I don't know if I really believe myself. I'm starting to back off, and this is what I'm doing right now. So, America, Kentucky, Earth, we have many problems that we're faced with, and since we need solutions to these problems, not just participant ribbon winners, but actual practical, usable, successful solutions, we need to educate and elevate those who are capable of getting the job done. With a limited budget, our society should direct more resources to the talented 10th, to the smart kids, the 3 to 5% intellectually or musically or creatively gifted and talented, the only possible hope for humanity, for our communities, and for our families. But if times aren't third world country bleak, then there's no emergency or imminent Titanic Hindenburg-like disaster crisis just over the horizon, and resources as cornucopia bountiful. Times are so good that fruits spill over the edges of our plates, and of course, everybody should be trained to be the best that they can be. We can create a whole world of leaders. We can create a whole country of leaders. A good leader isn't one who gets a lot of followers. A good leader is one who excels in their field and is very capable at what they do. That's a leader. To be given the freedom and opportunity of the so-called gifted and talented, and the encouragement to be, this is what the normies should be given, right? They should be given freedom. They should be given the opportunity that the gifted and talented, hopefully, will eventually get. And then they should also get the encouragement and to be inversely considered as average or lesser than anybody ever for any reason, especially when the disabling labeling schools are prone to do hits hard and does every year until they graduate or move. If I was one of the normies, I would need to protest the decision to not allow me in. Or if my kid was one of the normies not accepted into the gifted and talented programs, I would protest that. I would protest that because I think they would be limiting, the amount of opportunities that my child should be able to get. I was also in gifted and talented I wasn't in gifted and talented in Sanford, Florida. So I would need to protest the decision to not allow me in. Sanford, Florida didn't let me in. I would demand that they let me into their program. And I think the reason Sanford, Florida didn't let me in was because I just didn't know stuff. They quizzed me like who invented the light bulb and who did this and who did that, but I didn't know that stuff. And so instead of testing my IQ or creativity, they just tested my knowledge about stuff, and I failed, right? I totally failed. So I was not, according to Sanford, Florida, I wasn't gifted and talented. So I remember being in gifted and talented myself. I remember enjoying it. I haven't found much redeeming value on much of the oppression I endured under totalitarian regimes, public education. And when I think about the gifted and talented class at Gallatin County, Kentucky Elementary School, where I was in, and CMZ, Crittenden Mount Zion Elementary School, which is in Crittenden, and Grant County Middle School, all in Kentucky, I'm pleased with the results of it. Miss Flowers was my gifted and talented teacher at Gallatin County Elementary School. We played fun intellectual games in Grant County. We had mock trials, and I remember constructing a crossword puzzle about the state of Kentucky with Tim Fox. So we're utilizing our creativity. We're, being around smart folks like ourselves, and we're doing it, right? We're getting it done. Gifted and talented class will be an awesome class to teach. My gifted and talented classes had no grades, so the things that we did, we just did because we wanted to do them. just for the either the teacher's satisfaction, for our own satisfaction, to conform with the others for whatever reasons. Okay, it was more so because we wanted to do them, whereas there was no grade or anything else to behind it. So for some reason, my Babe Ruth report I did in 2nd or 3rd grade in Gifted and Talented elementary school, I remember vividly. I just made a little small book with folded construction paper, cut out pictures, and wrote about different parts of Babe Ruth's life. So basically, it was my first little book. My white female teacher, whose name escapes me, seemed very impressed with it too. This might be actually, I think it's Miss Flowers. I said it escaped me, and then I said her name, and then I said her name escapes me, right? I think it was Miss Flowers, okay? So Miss Flowers was the gifted and educated teacher in Gallatin County. I also remember that I was denied Gifted and Talented in an elementary school in Sanford, Florida, and how my life was devastated afterwards ever since. That's being over-the-top, dramatic, pretentious, ostentatious hyperbole, if you will. I did feel some sort of rejection and want to figure out why. Being like everybody else has its advantages, especially at 8 years old, but I was considered gifted and talented at other schools and felt like either those schools were inferior to this one, or they had different standards, or that I wasn't special or unique at all. Today, my educated guess would have been that I didn't pass their general trivia knowledge, like who invented the first light bulb and other knowledge-based questions. So while Crittenden and Mount Zion, CMZ valued my creativity more so because I remember making funny, crazy drawings in order to appear creative, but I'm sure they're creative, right? I'm sitting there trying to, I'll take like a picture of a box, and then I would make it like, I don't know, something you wouldn't expect a box to be made of, right? It's not like a box is like, a bunch of boxes stacked up together. The box would have been like a crazy hat that somebody wore or something. And that's interesting. So, how people define what is creative and what isn't creative. If I slap a bunch of paint on the wall, am I Jackson Pollock and I'm some genius who's going to, totally change the artistic field? Or am I just some, monkey just slapping paint all over the place and just being crazy? So, creativity, artistic value, I guess there is some subjectivity to that. Yeah, so my creativity potential, and doesn't everybody have creative potential? Like, who doesn't have creative potential? It mattered to CMZ, whereas Sanford, Florida's Gifted and Talented program teacher at the local elementary school in 1990 did not. At Gallatin County Elementary, I was chosen because of my grades, or maybe it was political, or maybe it was just because of my grades, and they did have inferior standards in Sanford, Florida's. Or maybe they were right, that I am smarter than others. I don't feel particularly smarter than anybody else out here. I just think about things. I put the time and effort into certain things that other people don't put the time and effort into. So if they was to do the same things that I do, they would come to the same conclusions. But since people don't utilize their time and resources the way I do, right now I'm in the middle of writing a history book for the Group Sugar family. That's fun on my own time. That's something I'm doing for fun, right? So that's leaving to my own abilities. I am productive and I do things, and I'm writing a book. I'm writing a history book. So writing a history book isn't necessarily anything smarter or better than anybody else. I'm just reading other stuff, and I'm getting the names, and I'm writing down the birthdays and the death dates and the marriage dates, and then I'm taking the historical timeline and I'm mashing it together to see where my ancestors fit in the scope of human history. So, by mashing up the general historical events with my own family's birthdays, marriages, and such, I get to see the general conditions of what they were raised up into. Who can do that? Anybody can do that. I've been working on this for about a week or so, and it's taken forever. I type a little bit faster, and I got more ideas and more to say than other people, but there's nothing that's inherently differently about me than anybody else. If I do have a high IQ, and so that might be the case. I might actually be, I'm not giving myself as much credit as I should give myself. But I still go back to like everybody else. And if you were to tell somebody, if you got them and inspired them to write a history book, sort of like what I'm doing, if they put the time into it and they were interested in doing it, they could develop, their own thing. Would be different form and different shape and different ideas, but it'll be, they would be able to produce a history book of some sort. And I think anybody is capable of doing anything that I'm able to do. And I don't think that's a really good thing, because that means I believe in humanity. You can take a C student and make a brain surgeon out of them. You could take, a normie and have them cure cancer. So you can take, you know, really anybody's got potential. And I also heard that it takes 10,000 scientists to make one scientific breakthrough. So just, you know, educating one or two, you can't have like one or two saviors, right? You gotta kind of teach them all. So anyways, yeah, so I didn't feel like I feel like anything I've ever accomplished could just have been easily accomplished by any other person on this planet who just puts in the same time and effort that I had done. Again, I acknowledge that natural talent does exist, but I believe the overwhelming vast majority of those with lucrative and profitable, maybe even legendary or life-saving gifts and talents, I'm going to repeat that sentence because I like it so much. So while I acknowledge that natural talent exists, I believe the overwhelming vast majority of those with lucrative and profitable, maybe even legendary or life-saving gifts and talents are folks who become gifted and talented by one of two ways. Either one, the luck of the draw, or two, good old-fashioned Benjamin Franklin self-driven, browbeaten, laborious work. So either you have great youthful training, luck of the draw, maybe you just have a great mind, maybe you're just naturally endowed, but most people get the talents and the things that they do through hard work and practice, just like Ben Franklin says. So while I can understand how the gifted and talented can feel isolated, maybe even discriminated against without an avenue for their gifts and talents to shine, to classify gifted and talented as a disorder would be ridiculous. Because those who have no gift and have no talents are the ones who are lacking, are the ones who are disadvantaged in society. Who has a disorder? Stupidity, ignorance. That disadvantage is them in society, the world, the marketplace. They may be qualified for government grants because, as the old generally known adage goes, if you think education is expensive, then try ignorance. Gifted and talented being grouped with other disabilities feels like it's done more so for politicians and educators to secure the funds for their advanced learners. And since there's no comprehensive policy in America for gifted and talented learners, educators are forced to use IDEA and other programs that are initially designed for helping folks out who have disorders that hinder their learning. The ones with the disorder would be the ignorant and the incompetent, while they would need the government handout assistance, which is another reason to protest not being included in the ultra-exclusive gifted and talented programs, even if you're not. Then you get to see who the gifted and talented are, and you'll be able to rise along with them. We fly when we befriend great American bald eagles. Not stupid, stinky, ploppy turkeys. Gifted and talented lobbyists should push for sweeping, comprehensive, gifted and talented policies for everybody, making it part of Common Core. Also, we should have one common way to cite papers. Right? APA, Chicago, give me a break. So while I cannot think of the many redeemable moments in my public education, it's also academic work. Is this going to be published? Why? Whatever. So while I cannot think of many redeemable moments in my public education, let alone classes or teachers, the few moments of gifted and talented I recall being exposed to, I'm very satisfied with. It should have been for credit, but c'est la vie. The gifted and talented gave me confidence in my abilities as well as being comfortable with being different. I also got to be around others who are gifted and talented. I got to use my creativity. It was fun to be taken out of class, especially for a gifted and talented program, which was a badge of honor. It's also interesting to note that other gifted and talented students weren't just the good students who participated a bunch in class, but instead they were folks from all walks of life. High IQ, the talented, not just the brown nosers, but the people who actually have talents and skills. Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences points out that how the stereotype of the dumb jock is flat out wrong on the face of the accusation, because having physical talents is a major form of intelligence in of itself. So, in conclusion, if there's a crisis or shortage of funds, lack of basic services, personnel, supplies, buildings, vehicles, technology, etc., then having a gifted and talented program is a must, for the future of humanity could depend on it. So if you don't have a gifted and talented program, if you don't have, the sort of ambitious or, rigorous type of program set up for your students so they can, pick up talents and skills that will make them more marketable in the job place, so make them, more productive and more talented, right? Give them a lockbox of skills. Then if you don't have any of that stuff, then you need to get that, okay? If you don't have a gifted and talented program, you need to get a gifted and talented program. You need to be able to focus on those 10% in the leadership class. You need to pull them up, okay? I'm talking about like poor schools. I'm talking about not necessarily, poor schools, yes, poor schools. There's only 10% of the poor people are being popped up to gifted and talented when anybody any walks of life can be gifted and talented, right? That's just your own abilities and what you do things. Rich people seem to be more gifted and talented because they've had a better childhood, so they've been exposed to more things, whereas your poor kids are just getting beat up by some white trash person living in a trailer, and they're not, what are they going to learn with that? They're not going to learn shit with that. And so in conclusion, if there's a need, if there's a lack of gifted and talented, you need to get one. Okay, so if you don't have one, you need to get one. But absent of a catastrophe, a looming catastrophe, everybody should be expected to rise to gifted and talented levels. We should have high expectations for everybody. And have a talent show, have something, pick a talent, pick something. I remember having a talented show, and people got up and they showed they had talents and they could do things. I couldn't think of anything that I could do. I was one of the smartest. I had straight A's. I was in gifted and talented, even in gifted and talented. But when they said, what talent do you have? I didn't know what I could get on stage and actually perform and do. That was a talent for other people. I don't know if, at the time, if I had a talent that I could show and do something for other people. Now I'd probably do some like sort of poetry slam or, something. I've been on this planet for a while, so I've been able to pick up different, gifts and talents because I've lived life. That's another thing. A lot of children haven't lived life, so how are you going to, you're going to ask somebody, what's your gift, what's your talents? Well, I'm a great saxophone player. How do you know? Even though you've never played it. Well, I feel it. I feel like I'm going to be a great saxophone player. Get out of here. You may have to actually put the saxophone from the school into the student's hand. It might have to come directly from that because, parents might not be able to afford it. And, that gives them an opportunity to be able to, excel at a talent, be able to do something with themselves. So, absent of catastrophe, absent of a looming disaster, absence of just having, sort of a lackluster, utilitarian teach to the middle or teach to the bottom approach. If you don't have that, absence of that, if you're doing well, so it's the difference between Barberville schools and Anchorage. Okay, so you got Barberville schools. They only got $8,000 per student, which is actually plenty of money. Okay, you can use that. You can use half of that and actually establish a charter school way better than the totalitarian oppression of public uneducation, miseducation. So public miseducation. It's not real education. It's teaching obedience to 100% blind obedience to arbitrary and absolute authority. That's what the totalitarian fascist education system is teaching other people. Huckleberry Finn. Anybody remember that novel? Huckleberry Finn, the great American novel, was about a person that just could not fucking stay in school. Instead of going to fucking school and learning the fucking bullshit from some nun who's slapping the shit out of you and making you, turning you into a fucking asshole and humiliating you in front of everybody and killing your fucking reputation, he said, fuck it, I'm going to go out to the river and I'm going to go rescue a slave. And he had fun and he had an adventure, and it's the memories of this life that we're going to be left with at the end of our lives. And so Huck Finn made the right decision. Huck Finn made the right decision to do the things he wanted to do. By doing the things he wanted to do, he built a raft, and he's rafting down the river. How fun, how incredible. Who can build a raft? Who's able to build a raft? Who's able to say they had a type of experience like I just explained? So you have a raft, right? You're rafting down the river, and just rafting on down the river. It says Huckleberry Finn, the great American novel, is about a dropout, about a person who just didn't want to be civilized by them old fucking, those sort of religious nuns. And I totally identify with that. I totally identify with that. They are not civilized. Those are the missionaries that was killing the Native Americans. Ku Klux Klan was Christian. So, this, be religious if you want to, but I'm not religious. So you don't put your religion on me. I don't want to learn your stupid ass religion. I don't want to believe the things that you believe. I believe in the golden rule. I believe in doing, treating others the way they should be treated. So, where am I going with all this? The point is everybody can be gifted and talented. So when you're Barberville, they need to elevate their talented 10 in leadership class because that county has been poor the entire time it's been in existence. It's the poorest county in the entire country, okay? It's the poorest, lower standards. They have lots of issues, and if there's ever any county or any place in this way, it's the people, the oppressed and downtrodden in the impoverished areas. Those places need a talented leadership class more than anybody else to understand the system, democracy, politics, to be able to change things and make things better. That's the only way things are going to happen. By the peaceful intelligence assertion. That's what we should be teaching our students. They have a sacred sovereignty, and we should teach them to peacefully and intelligently assert themselves. If you take away that and you just say 100% compliance, do as I tell you, JFK, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. So if a teacher is just 100%, no error whatsoever, there's only one way to break a, fascist, totalitarian psychopath like that. Using non-violence for a fucking psychopath, or just, removing yourself, going to a fucking different school. But to appeal, the problem with non-violence is that you pretend, by using non-violence, that your enemy has a conscience. Your enemy doesn't have a conscience. Your enemy doesn't give a shit. You're going to fucking use a moral appeal and intelligence and arguments to try to tell your fucking psychopath, KKK, fucking oppressive, molesting, fucking piece of shit, murdering, bloody, fucking, you're going to tell these fucking ass, you're going to let, no. When you make peaceful revolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. So if there is no avenue, if you take all the power, you take away their freedom, you take away their humanity, and then just expect 100% compliance, I don't give a fuck who you are, just do as the fuck as I tell you, or else I'm going to punish you, and there's no error around you, I think you deserve your just desserts. You're an asshole. You're a fucking piece of shit. And they should tell you that you're a fucking asshole. People want to sit there and say, don't cuss at me, don't cuss at me. Cuss is curse, okay? Don't curse at me. And curse is when you curse someone's name, when you say it in a bad connotation, when you say it in a bad way. So when I say, this fucking dentist office down the fucking street, this is a good example. So I go to this dentist, right, down in Radcliffe, and they had scheduled me for a Monday morning. Well, they called me up and they said that they had, a day before or two, they said that they had some emergency, a death in the family or some shit, and they, for me not to go there. And I'm just kind of, basically dumbfounded by the reaction to my question. Was sort of like, well, what we're going to do? They said, well, we'll reschedule it, and then, but if tomorrow there's an open spot, I'll give you a call. So I waited all day on that Tuesday, waiting for the call, so I go on and drive down there. So they fucked up my Monday, they fucked up my Tuesday, and then they rescheduled it for 3 weeks later at 8 a.m. on Monday, okay? So that night, I went to bed at about 1 or so, and I woke up a little bit late, and I wound up missing my appointment. I called them up, and like the hypocrites that they are, they said, well, somebody else could have been scheduled in that time, therefore you're hurting us, you need to not do that. And I started talking about what a hypocrite, you're an absolute hypocrite. What I should not have fucking, she asked why you didn't show up. I shouldn't have told her. Fuck off. You don't need to fucking know, it's none of your business. Why I wasn't able to show up? The same reason you canceled. That's why. Eventually I asked her why they canceled, and they said there's a death in the family. Okay, so is that true? Is that honest? She didn't even tell me what the fucking reason was when it came up. So she gets to cancel on me. She gets to fucking not give me a goddamn reason, and I fucking have to take her fucking bullshit, right? Hypocrisy. Fuck a hypocrite. Fuck a motherfucker that tells you to fucking live by a certain standard while they don't live by a standard themselves. Fuck those people. I cannot fucking stand hypocrites. And so, I don't know, this is all about education, and so, fuck a hypocrite or whatever. It's fucking bullshit when people expect you to do shit that they wouldn't normally do. But that's the American education system. That's what they're expecting everybody to do. Arbitrary, absolute authority. But what do they do in order to get that absolute compliance? They use psychopathy. They use fucking violence. They use fascism. They'll call some fucking security guard, drag the fucking student out. They'll use violence. They call some fucking asshole right around the fucking corner to use violence against you. You don't fucking comply to me, so Julie Chancellor out of JCPS, she's an asshole. She's a fucking total fucking shitty asshole. So she says, pick up the pencil and go to work, right? No. No, I don't like how you talk to me. I think you're an asshole, and I don't think you respect me. I don't think you're actually teaching me to be stronger, and you're not giving me any talents and skills in order to make my life better. I think all you're teaching me is that I'm a fucking piece of shit slave, and that I don't fucking matter at all in this world, and I think you're fucking up my reputation. Pick up the pencil, go fuck yourself. You pick up the fucking pencil. Right? That's what it sounds like when somebody, fights against an oppressor that just goes around barking orders. I got a dog right across there. I mean, can you imagine? I was driving a fucking truck and people are like, turn here, go there. When people are in your fucking ear, you can't think, you can't even hear yourself think. They're just fucking talking to you, right? That's how Hitler was able to manipulate. They used a spoken word. That's how Jonestown got all those people to commit suicide, right? Massive suicide with the fucking Jonestown in South America. How did they do it? They used the intercom system. They got people into a routine and they practiced over and over again. Then eventually it came down to it. What was the point? The point was mass suicide. That was the point of Jonestown. That was the point of the intercom system. That was the point of the indoctrination system. And that's sort of what it feels like with this. We're sending the children to the fucking slaughter, right? We don't give a shit. Just fucking send them to the goddamn slaughter, so they'll be fucking burnt up and destroyed. And so ultimately, my conclusions. I can go on and on about how public education is shitty, because when you take away a person's freedom and their humanity, you take everything that they are. You take every fucking thing that they are and ever will be. You take all 32 years of my fucking existence on this fucking planet, and, you know, I don't know. Part of me is I'm the fucking leader. I'm the fucking sort of pioneer when it comes to this shit. My kids ain't gonna put up with this shit. You know, I think a problem with what it is that I fucking go through is I have to fucking pick my battles. I have to say, well, shit. Do I stand up? Because a person can only feel pity for, you know, a creature for so long until they show power for themselves. That's Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass is getting beat up and treated like a fucking slave, like a bitch-ass nigger slave. Every fucking day. And then the fucking asshole, Covey, okay? Covey, fucking Covey, right? That fucking piece of shit. So you got fucking Covey, he's a Negro breaker. And the way you break a Negro is you beat them up and you fucking shut the fuck up. I remember, how do you break a fucking person is the same way you break an animal, okay? And this is really sad and it's really bad, and I feel bad about it. But it was an interesting fucking, there's a dog that I, you know, that was wild and that I want to pet and give it, you know, love and you know, take care of it for a pet, but it wouldn't do any, you know, it wouldn't do any things I wanted to do, and it was wild and crazy. So eventually I put them in a cage, and I left it in the cage overnight, and then when I came up to it and started petting it, it was real docile and would do anything that I wanted to do. That's what the fuck they're doing to us. They want 100% compliance, make us into a fucking dog, break our fucking spirit, break our fucking spell, and then once our fucking spirit and our fucking soul is broken, then they can manipulate us. And, you know, one middle school teacher said that students are malleable, right? Like aluminum foil. You can just kind of form them in any which way that you want them to be formed. They're malleable. No, they're not. They're fucking sovereign. And if you're sitting there fucking changing who they are every fucking day by making them do shit, rationalization follows behavior. So, yes, I can understand people, you know, when you make them compliant, you have to do the shit that they're doing, and by doing the fucking shit, they're able to learn the fucking skills and the fucking talents and what the fuck ever. So it might help with the scores, right? It might help at the end of the year scores. But in terms of personal relationships with other people, in terms of actually using that knowledge in society, none of that even fucking matters. They are teaching to the fucking test. They are just doing what the fuck it is that they gotta do in order to, you know, just read the fucking textbook, shut the fuck up, do as the fuck as I tell you. And so what do we need to do for Gifted and Talented program is we need to raise a 10% leadership class. We need to give them more resources, allow them more freedom and autonomy, respect their sovereignty, have cooperative learning circles, and have differentiated instruction so you're able to appeal to a mass base of people. That's what we need to do for the Gifted and Talented students. That's what we need to do for the Talented 10th. For the general population, we need to do the exact same thing. So if we're not elevating the 10%, start that program right now. And if you've had Gifted and Talented program for a long time, make it bigger. Make it school-wide. So that's my thoughts on Gifted and Talented. Jonathan Masters, pouring out of Muldrow, Kentucky. Sup.